Hey. I am not Chip, as you can tell. But be praying for him, not because there's anything wrong, but he's celebrating his 25th wedding anniversary this weekend. And so, one, because that is a very good testament to have as a pastor that you're committed to your marriage and you're committed to growing your marriage. But two, for us on staff that serve under him and just being able to say, it's okay to go and celebrate. It's okay to be able to take time off and go relax, which is not easy for pastors to do, just a heads up. So be praying for him to actually relax and not worry about what's going on over here. That's our job today. So if you will, go ahead. If you have your phone Bible, scroll to, or if you have your paper Bible, turn to Luke chapter 6, starting in verse 37. We are going to be starting there today, talking about the idea of dealing with personal sin. So, show of hands, how many of you love competition cooking shows? Okay, I'm big on MasterChef. Anybody? MasterChef? MasterChef Junior is a little bit better because Gordon Ramsay doesn't just scream at the children. He actually helps them, which I think is a lot better. But the one that me and my wife tend to watch a lot more, and it's way calmer. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but anybody big on Great British Bake Off? Great British Bake Off, anybody? Love that show. Okay, so Great British Bake Off, they have to bake all these different things on different weeks. So there's like a bread week, there's a cookie week, there's all those kinds of things. But one week is cake week. And so cake week is always interesting because it's always like, create this 3-layer awesome thing. And so you're watching them do this. You're sitting there with your Pop-Tart, eating it raw out of the thing, saying, man, I wouldn't have done that. I would have put cherries in it or whatever. And you're saying, like, oh, they're going to win. They're going to win. And they put out this beautiful, gorgeous, amazing cake on the counter for the judges to try. And you're like, there's no way that they can lose. And the judge comes, takes a fork and tries a bite, and they instantly spit it out. Why? They mixed up the salt and the sugar. All of us at the same time were like, oh, what an idiot, right? But here's the thing. We look at that moment in their life, right? I mean, I don't know that person on Great British Bake Off, right? We don't know these people on these baking shows, but we judge them in the moment that we see. We don't see the hours of prep that they had at home, the 3 times that they made this Godzilla-themed cake the right way. We don't see all the mental preparation that they go into. It's like, I have to get my timings right. I have to do all this stuff right. And they do it absolutely perfect, but they messed up one thing. And the thing is that if I tried to make a cake, if I made it after Star Wars, my favorite TV series, my cake would probably look like this. Pretty good, right? That's a good cake. I would eat that cake, right? So this is a little silly. This is kind of dumb, but the bigger point that I'm trying to make and that we're going to be talking about today is how we judge people who have committed sin against us. How do we deal with personal sin? How do we deal with the idea that somebody has offended us? Do we set a standard for everybody else that we could not attain ourselves? So, we're talking about the idea of hypocrisy in biblical forgiveness. So, starting in verse 37, we're going to break this up because this is a lot of reading. We're going to break it up into bits, but starting in verse 37, it says this: Judge not, and you will not be judged. Condemn not, and you will not be condemned. Forgive, and you will be forgiven. Give, and it will be given to you. Good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over, will be put into your lap. For with the measure you use, it will be measured back to you. And he also told them a parable. Can a blind man lead a blind man? Will they not both fall into a pit? A disciple is not above his teacher, but everyone, when he is fully trained, will be like this teacher. Why do you see the speck that is in your brother's eye, but do not notice the log that is in your own eye? How can you say to your brother, brother, let me take your speck out of that is in your eye, when you yourself do not see the log that is in your own? You hypocrite. First take the log out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to take out the speck that is in your brother's eye. So, if anybody knows me, if you've ever been by my office, one thing you can know about me by looking at my wall, I'm an Atlanta Braves fan. I'm also ordained, and I went to school, blah, 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 blah. Whatever. So if you look at my wall, I have all this Braves stuff. So I've been a Braves fan my entire life. I grew up being a Braves fan. My parents, probably against practical protocol, checked me out of school so we go to Braves games every once in a while. Don't do that. I mean, do that, but don't do that. And so I grew up being an absolutely huge Braves fan. I love the Atlanta Braves. And so when I was in college, I had the opportunity to go to spring training for a couple of years. We would take our spring break, go down to Orlando, because this is when they were still playing at Disney, and we would go to their ballpark and hang around, and we would see all these no-name ball players starting out their career in baseball. I saw Jason Hayward's first home run that he hit over a scoreboard in dead center field. That was crazy. It was like 500-something feet. He didn't turn out that great. I saw guys who had once been greats. I saw Chipper Jones last spring training. You know, all these really cool things. I had these really cool interactions with these young players who are just trying to make it on the roster. It's so cool that you could just walk around and, like, this person that you see on the TV that's this big, you're standing in front of them and they're like this big, and you're like, oh, that's why you're a pitcher. And so there was one guy, though, that I did not like. I watched him on the TV like pretty much every night. He was our backup catcher. He ended up going and being a back-to-back world champion. He ended up being the manager of the Cubs. Like, he was pretty decent ball player, but I didn't like him. He gave me this vibe of, you're a jerk. Like, just looking, you know when you see those people, their face, and you're like, you're going to be a jerk. I don't even want to talk to you. I haven't even met you yet. I don't want to. But this one year at spring training, we're sitting there. We get there early because we want to get autographs. If you ever go in my office, there's lots of autographs too. That's one thing I do. And he comes over to our group as we're just sitting there watching batting practice. And he sat down with us for like half an hour, just talking with us, joking with us, having a great. He is absolutely now one of my favorite players to watch and to talk about. Not because of all of his achievements, but because of I actually know him. I talked to him and I met him. I feel like a lot of us, we look at people from a distance and we judge them so harshly before we ever have a discussion. And now, what we're talking about today, just understand, like, I understand that there are people that genuinely have been hurt, that have genuinely been attacked, have been genuinely been treated poorly by people. And this isn't to say that, like, you did anything wrong, but it's to say, how do we deal with that afterward? You know, for me, this is just blind judgment where I'm blindly judging. I'll say his name, I guess. He's not going to watch this. David Ross. And in this, though, we're talking about the idea of judging other people based on our own perception. You know, here he talks about the idea of the sliver versus the log. And the Bible pretty plainly says, in what measure you give, it will be given back to you. So if I want forgiveness, I need to be willing to give forgiveness. If I want to be hated, then I'm going to be hateful. That the Bible is very clear on this, that whatever measure you're willing to dole out to the world, you're getting it right back. And so this is the question today. What is your level of judgment to the world? To what degree are you trying to fix the world or save the world or make the world the way you want it to be? For most of us, I feel like we have these emotional and social barriers that we keep up, right? And we've let those few in that we're like, I'm going to let you in even though there's something that might not be right. And we got our best friends and we're like, yeah, they're kind of screw-ups, but they're my screw-ups, so like I'm okay with that. But we don't let anybody else in. And the truth is that that's not what the Bible says. That we're supposed to be people of forgiveness, that we're supposed to be people that are willing to open and put down that barrier and say, I need to not judge people instantly, and I need to be able to listen to what they have to say. So this story is a little bit, I'm glad Megan's not here because it would make her mad. But I told the teenagers the story because it's part of my testimony, and so this is just something that I've had to deal with personally when it comes to the idea of forgiveness. This person that hurt me, that I had to go from hurt to being able to forgive. So when I was a kid, for those that have never met me before, my name's Steven. I was born with a physical disability called hemiparesis. It means that there's a blood vessel in my brain that was constricted, and so I have less motor function, and the right side of my body is slightly smaller than the left. So like I can do this with my left hand, I can't do that with my right hand. So I had a friend who lived in my neighborhood. His name was, I'm not going to say his name. That would be bad. I'm not going to say his name. Anyway, he was my best friend growing up. Kindergarten through 5th grade, we were always in the same class. We were both the tallest kids in the class, and so we always just hung out together. For some reason, people think I should play basketball then. Now I'm pretty average height, so I don't get that call anymore. But we hung out all the time. You know, sleepovers, all the jazz that you had in the 90s where you could hang out and do stuff all together, and there was no fear, apparently, of anything, but which was dumb. Anyway. So, me and my friend, in elementary school, they had these things. They were the hall monitors or hall safety monitors or whatever. We had nothing special. We had these little orange vest things, and we told kindergartners, stop running. That was essentially the amount of power that we had. And then because we were the tallest on the bus, we were also considered it's like bus helpers. So like if the bus were to break down, we're supposed to help get the kids off the bus. And because we were tall enough to be able to reach the top of the bus door or the bottom of the bus door, that was our job. So you had to sit in a certain spot on the bus. That was just the rule. You had to sit in the back seat of the bus so you could hop out first and help everybody get off. And so I'm walking to my seat on the bus, and somebody else is sitting in my seat, which is next to my friend. I said, hey, you have to move because this is my seat. This is my job. And he said, no, he's going to sit here. You sit somewhere else. I said, well, no, we're supposed to sit there together. And I only use this word because it's what he said, not because I think it's a good word to use. He looked at me and said, go away, you're a useless retard who's not going to amount to nothing. Now, as an adult, I can handle that. As a 11-year-old, being told that by my best friend, that hurt. And so for years, I struggled with this. You know, part of my testimony is I dealt with depression. I dealt with suicidal thoughts. I dealt with all these issues about myself because of how God made me who I was. And this was kind of the start. And so the one thing that I struggled with the most, even after realizing I know who God is, I know what he's done for me, I know he loves me, is how do I forgive that? My best friend. And I can tell you right now that if I were to see him again, I have gotten to a place of forgiveness. It wasn't easy. It definitely isn't easy because that's handing everything over to God. That is being able to say, God, I can't hold on to this anymore. I can't hold on to this bitterness. If I treated everyone like he treated me while telling people not to be bitter, I'd be a hypocrite. If I held on to that and I held on to that anger and that hurt, I'd be a hypocrite. And so what he's talking about here in this passage specifically is the blind leading the blind. How could I tell you that you should forgive, that you should be willing to look at a situation and say, I need to give this up, even if I can't physically get rid of the memory. I need to give up the hurt, the anger, the pain, the issue that I have right here so that I can move forward in the gospel. That's what he's saying, is that we are supposed to be those with the vision to see where God is leading, helping other people find that spot. But if I hold on to the anger in my heart, if I hang on to the brokenness inside of me, I am just a blind man leading the blind man. For you, it might be something different. For you, it might be some other issue that you're holding on to. Like, I'm never going to forgive them for this thing. The truth is, I will probably never see him again in my life. That's just the honest truth. But I know in my heart that I've forgiven him. Even if I don't get to say it verbally, even if I don't get to look him in the eye and say, this hurt me, but I forgive you, I have forgiven him. I have made it right with God and said, God, I'm holding on to this to try to hold it over his head. I'm done with that. What standard are you using? What standard are you using to hold people accountable? So the second part, starting in verse 43, which we heard about earlier, it's talking about tree and fruit. So the question is, why fruit? For no good tree bears bad fruit, nor again does a bad tree bear good fruit. For each tree is known by its own fruit, for figs are not gathered from thorn bushes, nor are the grapes picked from the bramble bush. The good person out of the good treasure of his heart produces good, and the evil person out of his evil treasure produces evil. For out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. So, anybody like to people watch? Anybody been at the airport and you're just like, ugh. You chose that? Or like the people that wear flip-flops to the airport? Like, okay, sorry, that was a little bit judgmental. Sorry, my bad. You shouldn't wear flip-flops to the airport, though. Like, or the people that don't wear shoes on the airplane. Oh gosh, okay, sorry. Anyway. So, my three favorite places, and I feel like everybody can agree with this: airports, gas stations, Waffle House. You can find whatever you're looking for, and you can just like, I don't know about that. But the reason I say that is because when you look at people, when you're people watching, everybody wears who they are, what they have experienced, and all that stuff out in the open. I can know if you are a Georgia fan or a Georgia Tech fan because you chose them when you were 8 years old and you can't give up that rivalry no matter what. I can tell if you're a Falcons fan or not a Falcons fan, which it's fair not to be a Falcons fan. It's kind of rough. I can tell if you're a Hufflepuff or a Gryffindor. That's for the younger people. It's Harry Potter. But I can even tell what politic you ascribe to. Because we like to wear what matters to us. I mean, just yesterday I was looking, and this is really dumb, I was looking at a button-down shirt that had Mickey Mouse all over it. Like, that's just, because the things that we like, we want other people to like with us, and so we show it to the world, and so you find your tribe of people. It's like, oh, you also like this weird, obscure thing? Okay, me too, let's hang out. But we wear what's impacted us. And the same is true with our spiritual life. The things that have impacted us, we show. Even if it seems like we hide it or we hold it in, it shows. It shows if you're frustrated. It shows if you've had a hurt in the past. It just shows. It's part of your demeanor. It's part of how you carry yourself. This metaphor that he's trying to use is trying to help us understand that what we plant is what grows. Just like I can't plant an apple tree and hope to get bananas, I can't plant bitterness in my heart and hope to grow peace. The truth is that whatever we are putting into ourselves is what's going to come out. I heard a pastor explain it this way, that the fruit that we are growing in our spiritual walk is not for us. A tree does not grow fruit for itself. A tree cannot consume its own fruit. It's for the people that pass by. And so we have to, just like you would for a tree outside, have to tend, digging into the metaphor, you have to tend to the tree that's in your heart. You have to tend to the thing that is inside of you. Matthew 7 says, you'll recognize them by their fruit. And so understand that this fruit is also listed in Scripture. It's the fruit of the Spirit. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. I think I got those right. But just like we're trying to grow a healthy tree outside, you need to water it. It needs to have proper sun. It needs to not be out in the winter in the cold. We have to tend to the tree that's inside. If you want your tree, your metaphorical spiritual tree, to produce good fruit, you have to tend to it the same way you would tend to the tree that's outside. So, prayer. Who's really good at prayer? I'm not. I'm not. Because I think I've talked about this before. When I close my eyes and I try to settle to pray, I'm talking to God, and then all of a sudden I'm thinking about, I'm going to have a biscuit for breakfast. And then talk about biscuits, and I'm like, who else likes biscuits? Navy SEALs like biscuits. You know what Navy SEALs really do? They're really cool. You know what movie had Navy SEALs in it? And I go off on this tangent, and for 5 minutes, I'm like, oh, and God, can you please help me? But prayer is one of the biggest things that we can do to grow and tend that relationship with Him. And it's getting in your word. Who's a really good reader in here? Not me. I'm really bad at reading. So bad that my mom had to put me into extra tutoring for the SAT because I was so bad at comprehensive reading that I had to get actual special focused education to help me with it. Terrible at it. But in our modern age, you know what exists? The audio Bible. And you can even get James Earl Jones reading it to you. If you don't know who that is, it's Mufasa. It's great. It's awesome. We have to nurture this relationship. How do we know if we screwed up if we don't know what God tells us a screw up is? God sets those lines in Scripture. And how do we confess, which is what He tells us to do, how do we confess the things that we do wrong if we don't have a relationship with Him where we're talking? Those are the two main things that God asks us to be, is people that are in an active relationship with Him and growing to understand Him better. If we don't have that conversation, the fruit in our heart, the fruit that we produce for the people around us, isn't going to be good. It's okay to say, I'm upset about this thing that happened to me. I'm upset about this thing that's I'm struggling with. It's okay to say, I don't know how to handle this thing that I'm struggling with. Honestly, that's what the church is here for. That we're supposed to be able to come here and lay down our burdens and be able to go into the week and say, even though this was a struggle, God, you're in control this week. You got it. I'm laying this down here. I'm walking away. So that way, this week when we go out, we're giving the fruit that people need. And then finally, the last part, verses 46 through 49, talking about foundation. Why do you call me Lord, Lord, and not do what I tell you? Everyone who comes to me hears my word and does them. I will show you what he is like. He is like a man building a house who dug deep and laid the foundation in the rock. And when a flood arose and the stream broke against the house and could not shake it because it had been well built. But one who hears and does not do them is like the man who built a house on the ground without a foundation. And when the stream broke against it, immediately it fell. And the ruin of that house was great. So the question is, how do we get to a position of being able to forgive? It's all about the foundation, where you build yourself. So, we all have different ways that we try to build ourselves up. Things that we build our life upon, things that we try to do. I'm going to get a little bit nerdier. This is going to make more sense. I have a lot of teenagers in the 11 o'clock service, and they're going to laugh at this because I'm going to say it wrong, but it's going to be fun. So a couple of years ago, I remember hearing this news story, and you might have heard it too, that a 16-year-old kid, I think it was $1.6 million playing Fortnite. Now, if you don't know what Fortnite is, it's a video game. It's really dumb. People love it. I don't get it. But basically, your job is you're supposed to beat everybody else that's on the map, and you can like build stuff, and you run around, you get power-ups and all that stuff. Anyway, thousands and thousands, if not millions of kids every day are playing Fortnite thinking, I'm going to be that kid. I'm going to win millions. The problem is that they're not looking forward, because you might love Fortnite. What happens when you get carpal tunnel? And so we talk about that one, but some of us pour our lives into our careers. What happens when the company goes under? Some of us pour our lives into our family, our kids. What happens when the kids move out of the house? This foundation that we're talking about is the only foundation that really matters, the only one that really can be built upon. And what Jesus is talking about here is building your foundation upon his word, upon what he has said, and upon the gospel that he shares and the gospel that he gave. And it all starts here. Come to me, all who are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Or, in John, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father but through me. Or in John 13, at the Last Supper, where he says, if I then, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. Jesus said, start with him. Know who he is and the gift that he gave us, and understanding why we needed eternal salvation from sin. If we're pursuing that, if we're trying to pursue God's purpose in this life, even if we don't understand exactly what the next step is, even if we're saying, God, you're in control of this, I don't know why we're going this direction, but I'm going to trust you that I'm trying to go in your direction. Sometimes we don't get the clarity that we want. 90% of the time we don't get the clarity that we want. God asks us to take a step in faith. Even if we don't understand that what we are doing all the time, we know we're pursuing God. In order that maybe one day we get to show somebody the gospel that we so love. When your foundation is weak, when your foundation is built on yourself, when your foundation is built on what you can do, when your foundation is built on the passions that God has given you, eventually that's going to fail. It just happens. We're people. It happens all the time. When you try to say, my family is going to be like this, and you say, I am going to lead our family. I'm going to do what's right. I'm going to be strong. But you don't say, I'm going to build my family on the foundation of Christ. Because then it's not, I'm building on what I know, I'm building on what God is. Eventually, if you don't have that foundation, it's going to fail. But I understand, and I'm not, I always say I'm not ignorant enough to believe that everybody in this room believes that God is real. A lot of people come into church for the first time, or maybe for years and years and years, not even really believing that God is real, but thinking like, okay, well, I know that church is good, even if I don't believe what we're talking about. And so, here's what I would tell you. For some of you, this is just a refresher saying, I need to give up this thing. I need to give up my bitterness. I need to be able to get the thing that I'm dealing with away before I could even ever attempt to try to fix somebody else. I need to be willing to tend to what's in my heart, to not be bitter, to not be angry, to not be hurt, and be able to say, I need to give to the people around me love and peace and passion for Christ. For those of you that are not believers in this room, here's what I'll tell you. There is a God who loves you. Doesn't matter what you did. Doesn't matter how bad you think you are. God says, come to me, all who are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. You see, we chose to be separated from God. I think Chip said it before, but who taught you how to lie? Nobody, right? Within us is a sin nature. We choose every day to rebel against God, and we choose our own way. Without God, we have no hope. In the Old Testament, he had the sacrifice system where he said, if you sacrifice a sheep and send one into the wilderness, then it's okay. How many of you have sheep? I mean, some people probably do in the room. I don't know. But that's not sustainable. The relationship was still broken because we couldn't communicate directly with our God and our Father. He realized that when he created Adam and Eve, that he was going to have to bridge that relationship. And the way he did is he sent his son, Jesus, to die on a cross specifically for you. Not the you who you could be, you. With all your faults, with all your brokenness, he said, I love this person so much that I need to send Christ to this world to live a perfect life and die for them. It has nothing to do with who I am, who JB is, who anybody on the stage is. We are here by the grace of God. And so I would tell you today, if you do not know this God whom I love, this Jesus who saved me, and you are at least in the slightest bit curious, don't leave here without talking to somebody. You know, my Sunday school teacher when I was growing up, and I think this is something from the 50s, but he would always say, know that you know that you know that you know. That there's no doubt of today, if today was my last day, and God says, Dunzo, I know where I'm going. So, here's our response for today. For those of you that are believers, that are hanging on to a bitterness, that are hanging on to a hurt, that are hanging on to something bigger than yourself, lay it down. Don't let it bog you down from being the best that you can be anymore for Christ. Tend that garden that's inside of you. Tend your heart and lay it at this altar. And like I said, I know there are people that have like actual hurts, actual things. It wasn't your fault. But it's your choice if you're willing to forgive. That's one. If you're a believer and you need to give stuff up to God, do it. That's what this altar is for. You can do it in your seat. But don't leave here holding on to the same thing you're holding on to last week and the week before and the week before and the week before. Get rid of that bitterness and start fresh this week. If you're not a Christian, I'm going to stand over here. If you want to talk to somebody, I'll be right here. If you don't want to talk to somebody right now, there's a little card that you got in your worship folder when you came in. It says, I want to be saved. I want to talk to a pastor. Mark those things down. It comes to us directly on Monday, and we'll be able to reach out. But don't leave here without knowing that you know that you know that you know what you're doing this week. So I'm going to pray. God, you're great. And we are so thankful that we have the ability to worship you this morning. And I know we don't deserve it, but God, you give it to us freely. And so I pray for all of us here this morning, those of us that are dealing with hurt, with brokenness, with pain, that we would give it up to you this morning. And God, I just pray that for one person in here that might be unsure of where they stand with you, that you would just open their eyes, that you love them, that you care about them, who they are, and that we would just be able to celebrate with them that they found new life today. And so God, just be with us here in this moment. Be with us as we worship. In your name we pray. Amen.